Uh, Recording has started. So, good evening, one and all, and good evening to Professor Dipankar Sinha.
Good evening.
First of all, I am thankful to Professor Sinha that he had given consent, though special request was made by Professor Sujan Mishra, and I just conveyed it to him, and he suddenly agreed to this, invitation. Sir, I have been doing this web talk for the academic purpose, and since the last 7 months, I have been doing it, and this is the 42nd,
Oh,
uh, you know,
great.
talk. Right now, students are having, exam. Maybe after this vacation, their exam will start. So, their number is not that much big. But since I'm uploading it on the YouTube, they are viewing from the YouTube, and my YouTube channel has more than 300 subscribers.
Good.
So, as the convener, let me introduce the speaker and let me introduce the topic. So, today's speaker, as I have mentioned, that Professor Dipankar Sinha, he is from the Calcutta University, and prior to this, he was also the director of the Center for Social Science, Humanities, Calcutta University. He was the honorary associate in the Center for Media History, uh, you know, Macquarie University, Sydney. He was the honorary professor, Institute of Development Studies, Calcutta. He was the nominated member, Association of Third World Studies, and now it is the Association of Global Politics, USA. See, whatever I'm saying, I'm saying it from the CV that is available on the
Mhm.
Google.
No, I'm still there. It's not was. I'm still holding these
Yes,
positions.
sir. Yes,
Okay.
and his area of research is informational and communicative modes of development, democracy, and governance in global era. He has authored 6 books with Routledge and Orient Blackswan and other publishers. He has co-authored 4 books, co-edited 2 books. He has n number of articles as book chapters and articles in various reputed journals. He has, this is something important, I got surprised that he has completed 2,500 projects since 1989, and all these projects are from at the international level, national level, and regional level. Regional level, and one may view his web self profile if one is interested to know much or more about him. In fact, he has huge publication in his CV. And since his area of research is informational and communicative mode of development, and he's, I mean, he's going to deliberate on a similar kind of topic, that is political communication and governance, reflection on contemporary India. And as we know that political communication is all about how information spreads and influences the politics, policymaker, news media, and citizen. And today, the speaker will connect this political communication with the governance. And in this talk or lecture, the speaker will do a brief engagement with the conceptual domain of political communication, and then he will focus on post-liberalization India, guided by the key premise that the governance templates in India is currently undergoing a transition. An argument will be made that political scientists in particular, now confronted with a wake-up call to address and analyze the process in all its complexity, and complexity necessitating a departure from the conventional mode of understanding politics. The lecture will elaborate a paradigmatic transition from the state-led path of development to the market-dominant path, and its interface with the political communication in India needs a rigorous analysis. In accordance with the above contention, the lecture will throw light on the impact of this process of transition of public policy formulation and implementation. See, this topic is not something new. I mean, we have already, maybe in two or three talks, our previous speaker has, they have dealt with such topic. But it's all about interpretation. When two people speak on a similar topic or same topic, their interpretations are going to going to be differ. So, the topic is this, in a not and cell, I can say that, how the state driven or state led path of development, how it got changed uh, due to this, you know, uh, due to this neoliberal, uh, you know, uh, neoliberal state, right? And how it changed from the state-led development to the market, led development. On that, and in that atmosphere, how this political, communication is shapes and is shaped. Maybe on that, today's speaker will deliberate, and certainly will give us uh, you know an understanding, a critical understanding, let me say it, on this topic. So with this introduction, I once again welcome to Professor Dipankar Sinha, and I request him to start his deliberation on this topic. Yes, sir, please, you can
Mm.
start.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. I think it's a wonderful effort that or initiative you are taking, and that is how a good teacher, a researcher should do, because you are bringing in younger scholars, which I like really, because they are the ones who are our future. I mean, we are very seniors. I mean, not you, you are much younger than me, but for us, I am yet to become a senior citizen, but very soon I will. But this is, the mantle is, with them now, that whether social science or political science in India would make progress or not, that will depend on them. So it's good that you are really taking up this kind of initiative, which I really appreciate. I want to thank you. And I thank Professor S.N. Mishra, who is like my elder brother, elder friend. And I understand that two Mishras have conspired to bring me here. So I can't say no to Professor Mishra. And when you mentioned him, I really, of course, I immediately agreed. And another thing I want to mention is that Odisha has a special place in my mind, because my mother was from Odisha, from Puri. So still I visit Puri. Of course, she is no more, but I visit Puri 4 or 5 times a year. And even if I'm a bit shy to speak Oriya, but uh, as you understand that I have an emotional bond with my neighboring state, especially through my mother. Thank you. So I will speak on, as I've rightly mentioned, political communication and governance, reflections on contemporary India. Now it's a huge topic, very complex topic, but I will try to make it, as succinct as possible, and would leave certain clues and cues for the students to consider. And I would eagerly wait for, I think, questions, and that question and answer session would be, I think, I would definitely look for that. Now, I would start with a paradox. I would refer to a particular paradox. Even if political communication is, finds a very, very important place all over the world in the syllabus of political science, in India, it is underestimated, severely underestimated in syllabus. It finds a very small place here and there in most syllabuses, because I am, acting as advice assistant at several universities in India. I find that it is it has a very marginal existence. Now the problem is that, in order to understand politics, how can you really go about it without understanding political communication? Because political communication is the nerve center of politics, and it is not that I am saying it for the first time. I will tell the audience, and I think many of them have read this. Harold Laswell's famous article, "The Structure and Function of Communication in Society." Now, this article, "The Structure and Function of Communication in Society," which may be available now freely on the net, it was published in 1948. Now, Harold Laswell has been writing about political communication from 1932 to 19 98. I mean, he has a long life, of course. And consistently he was mentioning that how can you understand politics without having a good understanding of communication. Now, in that article, written way back in 1948, think of it, none of us were anywhere near being born at that point of time. He presented a set of questions that look, if you explore these questions through your studies, through your research, then you will understand what political communication is. And what was that? That who said what, when, and how? Who said what, when, and how? Now, apparently, it seems a simple set of questions, but as you can see, it has tremendous significance. Now, I would extend Laswell's, set of questions, and in different writings of mine, I have also explained this. That let's expand it a bit further, keeping Laswell in mind, the set of questions in mind. That who communicates? The first question. Or if you want to put it in plural, who communicate, and how the message is distributed, or how the messages are distributed. The second question. The first one is who communicate or who communicates. Second is how the messages are distributed or how the message is distributed. Third, to whom. Very, very important question is to whom. Fourth, with whose help. That means through what channels. And also, another very important question is in what condition, because the context is also important. In what condition? With what purpose? And yet another question. With what purpose? And the last question here in my set of questions, which I deduce from Laswell's who said what, when, and how. The last one is with what impact? With what impact? Now, if you read one of the greatest, social scientists, I would say political scientist and a scholar of international relations, Carl Deutsch. Carl Deutsch had written a book, Nationalism and Social Communication. It was in 1953. Then he wrote a very, very important book, which is also very important for our discussion, Nerves of Government. Nerves of Government, where he mentioned clearly, he theorized it, that, you have to understand communication because communication channels are the nerves of the government. If government is the body, then the nerves are communication channels. So without understanding communication channels, you can never have a better understanding. You may have a kind of, truncated, kind of brief or incomplete understanding of government, but you can never have the proper understanding of government without understanding the nerves, by which he meant communication channels. Now, same in the earlier book, Nationalism and Social Communication, he was referring to the same point, that how does nationalism take place? Can you really understand? Say, we the Indians, this Indianness, that we may be from different parts of the country, but we have this identity, national identity as Indian. And many of us know that when we go abroad, that becomes even more evident, our Indianness, our nationalism. Maybe when I stay back in India, I may not be very, very acutely conscious of this. But when I go abroad, when I see the Indian flag flying, say in the United Nations, for instance, I look for the flag. I mean, there are so many flags in the United Nations flying, but I look for the Indian flag. Now, how does it happen? How am I to become an Indian? Despite all these ethnic, religious, and different categories of, ascribed kind of categories that we have, it is through communication. It is through communication it happens. Now, the problem with political communication is that it lacks a unanimous definition. If you ask any scholar in the world that, sir, give us or madam, give us a unanimous definition of political self, then they will hesitate. So in the handbook of political communication, it is, the first line they mention is that it is a term or concept which is better to describe than to define. So it is easy to describe political communication than to have a kind of unanimous definition. But what is important is that, political communication is extremely important, apart from other factors, because of the language, how do we speak about politics? How do we speak in politics? So how can you really understand without understanding the language of politics? Say when India is making a transition from the statist path of development to the market-led path of development, the language changes. When technology makes huge progress, information, this is going through, this is a virtual kind of thing that we are having online. Now today, any younger generation, not my generation, next generation, when they would utter the word uploading or downloading, they immediately would associate it with what? With the virtual kind of thing, that you are uploading some material or downloading. But in our younger days, uploading or downloading would mean, uploading something from the truck or uploading something from the lorry. We could never think of, the fact that uploading would be associated with almost only with kind of this virtual thing. So what we are having is, we live in the world of language. And you cannot properly understand. One problem with Indian political scientists is that, we talk of politics of language, but we rarely talk of, the what is also very important. We talk of language politics, that this state has these and whether Hindi should be imposed or not. Right now, we are having this kind of controversy, going on. But what we don't really consider very seriously is that language has its politics, in itself also. I mean, it is not just the question of Bengali, Oriya, Tamil, Punjabi, Gujarati, and Hindi. It is also the question of how we interpret, as Dr. Mishra has mentioned, interpretation, he has mentioned. How do I interpret politics and what kind of language am I using? So there can be thousands of speakers speaking on political communication, but that would be in 1,000 different ways. Because the way I speak will be different from the way the other scholars speak, and that is also true of other scholars also. So, I mean, in order to understand, political communication, language is a major component, element we have to consider. And then there is also another very, very important element in political communication, that is non-verbal, non-verbal language. It is not just the verbal language, but the non-verbal language. That is also important. The walking style, the lecturing style, the symbols, for instance, the Indian flag. I mean, the symbol is, when you see it, when you go to see a film, you have to stand up and you see, I still have goosebumps, when the national anthem is played, because that is my country's national anthem. Obviously, when national anthem of some other countries would be played, I would not have that kind of feeling. So the symbol is very important. Say Gandhi as a symbol, you don't even have to draw Gandhi's face. In various public service advertisement, you see a bald-headed man with just spectacles. You immediately know that it is Gandhi. How do you know it? It is a symbol that matters, because Gandhi is a symbol of, and anybody else. I mean, if you think of the successive prime ministers in India, the way that, I mean, the non-verbal language was also important. And, say, for instance, the present prime minister, he is not just the language, but also the body language. That also becomes very, very important. And also of anybody, I mean, any political leaders, our chief ministers, and so on and so forth. Now, there are basically, three levels of, message formation and communication when you consider political communication. One, as is evident from whatever I've said, the politicians and the political activists. That's a major. If you think of a triad, or if you think of a triangle, then one point of the triangle will be the politicians and political activists. Because if you really want to understand political communication theoretically and in the Indian context, you have to analyze the politicians and political activists. Second is, as I think Dr. Mishra has passingly mentioned in the introductory part, media. Extremely important, because today media is, becoming the major actor, almost trying to determine everything about us. The media is trying to act as a judiciary, media is trying to act as a legislature, media is trying to act as a government or the executive. Media has become so powerful, the mainstream media, that you can't really, ignore it. So it is the second point in the triangle that we have to keep in mind. And the third point, most obviously, as you can understand, are the citizens, the people, the citizens. So this triad is very, very important in understanding political communication. And I would argue, and this is my favorite statement throughout, in last 34 years of my teaching and research, I always mention this, that through political communication, the society finds its polity. Society finds its polity. Without political communication, society cannot find its polity, however much you try to find it in different ways. It is through political communication that society finds its polity. And for political scientists like us, for political students like us, it is very, very important to understand this. Now, you may ask that why do I say this? That society finding polity. I would say that, look, if you think very carefully, then you will find that political communication puts random actions into relationships. Political communication puts random actions into relationships. So otherwise, everything is random, scattered and dissipated and disseminated in different parts of the society. It is through political communication you have you can convert these random actions into certain kinds of relationships. Now, in the last part of my theoretical conceptual discussion, because I have 1 hour at my disposal, and I would be rather interested in having discussions, I would refer to 5 major structures of political communication as identified by 2 very, very eminent social scientists, Gabriel Hammond and Bingham Powell. Hammond and Powell have identified 5 major structures or channels of political communication. Now, one is, the face-to-face communication, which is very, very important. It is informal, but it is of fundamental importance. Say, for instance, when you think of governance, we have, as the people, we get the policies, that this policy has been framed by the government through a cabinet decision, it has been passed, so on and so forth. The familiar path. But before that, there are a lot of informal discussions going on among ministers, among cabinet ministers meeting the party colleagues and party activists, maybe some people here and there consulting them. So there is always this informal face-to-face structure which is there. Even if you make it formal, the informal is very much there, and that is also very, very important. So, you can talk to relatives about politics. You can talk to your friends about politics. You discuss politics with your colleagues, with your neighbors, and so on and so forth. Kazan Lazarsfeld in 1955 had written a book, if I remember correctly. I read that book several times. Personal influence. Personal influence. They tell us, they warn us that, look, don't interpret politics only in formal terms, because personal influence matters. Whom the chief minister will induct as the minister, say in Odisha, just maybe 4 days back or 5 days back, you had a cabinet reshuffle, right? And we are going to have it very soon in Bengal. Now, whom would you choose as your ministers? You have to understand the personal factors are also working there. Maybe that you choose a minister as a reliable minister with whom you have studied in the college or in the university or in the school. All these are elaborated, in this book, Personal Influence. The college ties, they mention that I studied in this college, so it matters to me that I will have someone in my cabinet from the same college, because we belong to the same school or the same college or the same university. Then there is also the traditional social structure, the Sardar, the Mukhia, the tribal panchayat, the religious leaders, so on and so forth. It's very, very important, because today India is having a terrible kind of experience because of, the certain comments made by certain spokespersons and all that. Now, what the government is now trying to do, and in West Bengal it is also happening, they are appealing to the religious leaders that please you tell the people that this is not the way to do it. So they are very, very important. All the traditional social structures, as you know, because you belong to Odisha, you know that substantial part of Orissa is tribal Orissa. So you know that how important they are, the tribal leaders are. So that is also very, very important. Then you have the input structure, the political parties, the pressure groups, the interest groups who are expressing and selecting demands and grievances, because all the demands and grievances cannot be taken into consideration in policy making. You have to go through this policy of inclusion and exclusion. So political parties are acting as input structure, pressure groups, interest groups are acting as input structures, and so forth. Then you also have the output structure, say bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is implementing policies through reports, orders, memorandum, and all, judiciary through verdicts, court verdicts, and all that. And last but not the least, they also point out that media, which is making now, of course, spectacular progress in this post-satellite era and borderless world and so on and so forth. And when we talk of media today, you know very well that you just can't talk of print media and electronic media. You also have to talk of the newest entry to the media world, which is social media, which is, has become so very important in our life today throughout the world. You think of the top richest persons in the world, Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, who died, of course, and then Mark Zuckerberg, all of them are, Bill Gates, they are into media business, and they are into, they are trying to, make advance in the media through information technology, which has a tremendous potential, but also certain maybe unwarranted or unwanted issues also. So what I'm trying to hint at is that without understanding the structures, how can you really understand political communication? And without understanding political communication, how can you really understand politics? Now I will come to the second part of my presentation lecture, which is specifically on India. As Dr. Mishra has already hinted, that I will focus on, because the time is short, it is 1 hour, so I will try to, I will not focus so much on the pre-colonial India and India during independence and all that. I will passingly refer to India during independence, but I will specifically focus on the post-liberalization India, because as young students and researchers, that is your huge challenge today, to understand Indian politics in the contemporary context. You just can't have your ideas churned out through certain I will say that older concepts, basically statist concepts, because the world has moved on, whether we like it or not. I'm not saying that the market is becoming so predominant is a wonderful thing in every sense of the term. I have my own critique of the market economy. But the point remains that today market has become a major determinant of politics, and market in many cases has become a more powerful entity than the state. So you know that if you see the World Investment Report or the Multinational Corporations Report, you will find that 25 top corporations, multinational corporations, have more economic power than 150 states of the world. Can you imagine? 25 multinational corporations dominate the global economy. The states are only assisting them, because states are poorer in economic terms, in financial terms, than these 25 multinational corporations. Think of the big five: Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Google, Microsoft. Just this five. I mean, I can mention any more. In fact, Elon Musk has recently taken over Twitter. Uh, just think of this. I mean, the way they determine our life. How can they do it? How is it possible that they are determining? Because they are part of the market ambit. They are within the market orbit. But I have only mentioned 5 or 6, only infotech companies, infotech firms, infotech giants, which are called big tech. But there are many others who are into various other kind of financial consultancy and so forth. I will mention that in the Indian context. So my point of departure in the second part is that as students of political science, we have to understand that whether we like it or not, the state is giving way to the market. I'm not saying that the state is withered away. The state is there. But state is in a, what I tell my students, in a lighter vein, is that state has been in the slimming parlor, in the beauty parlor for slimming, and the Indian state has, like many other states in the world, Indian state has become much slimmer. It had become so fat that the market told the state that, look, you have to be slim, you have to look slim, otherwise how can we collaborate? So the state is getting slimmer. You know what I'm saying? This is also a political communication statement. What I'm trying to give you in just one sentence, you understand the significance of politics of this. So I will argue, I will appeal to you that please try to understand governance in the lens of political communication. Because my key premise is this, that the India's governance template is currently undergoing a huge transition. The post-liberalization era is reconfiguring the political. The post-liberalization era is reconstituting the political. You may ask that, sir, why are you saying this? Because this is my answer, that because post-liberalization era is reconfiguring or reconstituting or reworking the political. I mean, the way our teachers had taught us political science in the statist days, if I now do the same thing to my students, I will be doing a crime. Because I have to tell them that, look, times have that doesn't mean that I will not teach them the statist political theories and all that, because that is the background that they have to know, of course, from 1947, and you can go back to Haripura Congress, Subhash Bose, and Subhash Bose is also yours as much as ours, so Subhash Bose, Jawaharlal Nehru, National Planning Committee, you can even go back to 1934. So from 1934 to 1991, India had this path of statist development. I'm not saying that we shouldn't study that. We have to study that. But we have to situate ourselves to the contemporary India, That is my major issue with me. So I would argue that, the wake-up call, it's a wake-up call to reframe both political and communication in the post-liberalization India. So I would give you a wake-up call to reframe both the political and the communication in order to understand contemporary India. Now I go into the details of this. I mean, I have given you the main idea. Now I break it up into various points. Now, as you know that this is a economic revolution that we had through the, when we adopted liberal market reforms in July 1991. But it is not just economic, it has huge political, social, and cultural impact. It may be an economic move in order to get certain loans from the IMF and all that, but it is not just economic, it is political, very much political. The decision was political. So the business of governing, in the new state market dialectic since 1990s, we have to study. And a Rutledge, which is my publisher now, it will be coming out very soon with an edited volume, which has been co-edited by two. One of them is my former student, now a senior teacher. It is Political Communication in India. There I wrote the very first article where I mentioned that this is the gray area of political communication, the state market, transition, that India is making a transition from the statist part to the market part. This is a gray zone, gray area, which we have to understand, we have to theorize, because much of it is very ambiguous. Much of it is very fragmented, very ambiguous, very unclear to us. Now, the conventional political analysis rests much on the state market dichotomy. Because you know that in India, we had a very, very powerful state, and the market was, of course, there, but market was secondary to the state. Market was assisting the state in the path of development. And there was a state market dichotomy in the sense that it was acute case of state centrism. So market will be there to assist the state, but market will never have market will never dare to surpass the power of the state, as you well understand. But post-liberalization in India has led to a new state-market interface. The state and the market, now they have moved from the mutual hostility that they had, and now they are into proactive collaboration. So there is a changing dynamics of politics. which we have to understand through the lens of political communication. Because there is a distinct style now. The market seeks to hold the reins of governance, keeping the state at the forefront. As I said, the state has not withered away. The state has not vanished. The state is on the forefront, at the forefront. The market is playing from behind. So that is very, very important to understand. We have to understand the importance of Mukesh Ambani. We have to understand the importance of Adani. Because without understanding, their role in public policies now, you just can't say that, look, this government is doing this and that government is doing this, because they are the powerful forces now. Compare the state of BSNL with that of Geo. What do you find? That is the story of the state and the market. So, one is the story of decline, and the other is the story of inflation, the story of progress, the story of advancement. And that is only a symptom of the, major issue fundamental issue that I'm referring to, the state market dialectic. So India, if you see it in communication terms also, India has made a shift in political communication from the quote-unquote Indian polity to the quote-unquote India Incorporated, India INC. India is becoming corporatized in every sense of the term. You pay your medical premium. You understand. There has been a kind of, 50% jump in medical. How many Indians can afford to do it? How many Indians are being able to pay their medical premium? Unless you belong to the privileged sections, at least to the upper middle class section. So it is basically making a steady movement from transition from Indian polity to India Incorporated or India INC. So that we have to understand. And the state has now become the Indian state, like many other states in the world, including especially the developing countries, because in developed countries, you must understand, the state is remaining very strong and having, strong markets, strong states. Say like in Scandinavian countries, for instance, the state is excessively strong. In France, state is very strong. In USA, state is very strong, but the market is also very strong. In our case, in the developing countries like India, what is happening is that the state has become a market state, market guided state. It is becoming a market led state, market guided state, because the activist state that we had since 1947 during the what we usually call the Nehruvian era, the Nehruvian state, that state is no longer there. So this is a very important point. Now I come to a very important related point, which as students of political science and social science, we have to understand. If you see contemporary India today, the governance scenario in contemporary India today, you will see that increasingly we are having more focus on the actors and less focus on the institutions. India, whether you may criticize India for many reasons, but India had one wonderful progress report since 1947, that despite many limitations, we have been able to construct important institutions. That could be universities, that could be government hospitals, that could be judiciary, executive, legislature in various. I'm not saying that everything was fine about it, but we had this urge to build institutions as a then newly independent country since 1947. But now, since 1991, especially in the new millennium, we are focusing more on actors and less on institutions. Many public institutions are becoming, less powerful, less effective, and that includes the public universities. Even in your state, one major private actor, in the academic world, I would say, is, attracting students from different parts of India, right? Not very far from Bhubaneswar. Okay. So the point is that we have even here, everywhere this is happening. I am specifically focusing on institutions, on academic institutions, because we belong to those institutions in our life. But any institution you think of, we are focusing more on actors. Previously, you may ask, that sir, you were saying this, but previously weren't actors there? Yes, actors were there. Actors were supposed to act within the institutional orbit. Even a powerful prime minister like Jawaharlal Nehru had to, I mean, if you read his speeches, I often read his selected speeches, even if I have some criticisms against him, but I admire him for many things. I always find that he is trying to argue that, look, as a first prime minister of India and all that, I'm trying to build, I am part of the institutions. Please understand that we are trying to build this it's a planning commission and so on and so forth. Today, institutions are becoming more of an appendage to actors. And media is also playing its role. The mediatized politics that we have, media is also promoting it because media, as you know, is owned and managed by the private entrepreneurs. So it also promotes the cause of the private actors. It promotes privatization. It promotes liberalization. And it always says that, look, public institutions are, no good. You should have privatization of everything. So that is what we are having. The actors are becoming more important than the institutions. Actors' logic is surpassing the institutional logic. What I call actorization of institutions is happening in India. Actorization of institutions is happening in India. So today you will find, I don't have to name names because immediately you think of the top politicians of India. Their governing is intertwined with spectacles, populist acts and rhetorics, full of spectacles, full of populist rhetorics and so on and so forth. And institutions have become more of a playground for these actors. So what is happening for the Indian state is that Indian state has become more hesitant because institutions are becoming weaker. Public institutions are becoming weaker. So Indian state has become more hesitant in its approach, more undecided, more shifting, more defensive. And, this is what is happening in India now. Now I will give you a concrete instance. I just mentioned Planning Commission as one of the major institutions that India had constructed. It came to it was established in 1950, but that the history, National Planning Committee, as I said, Bose and Nehru and all that, we had that. Okay, Planning Commission had guided Indian development till 12th land. But now Planning Commission has been abolished and we have Niti Aayog, right? Now Niti Aayog, if you see it very carefully, Niti Aayog has been created by an executive order and Niti Aayog does not have any statutory status. Can you imagine? It has been created by an executive order without having statutory status, and it is headed by, not by the chairman, as Planning Commission had, chairman, deputy chairman. It is headed by a CEO, corporatization of India, India INC, into the picture. It is headed by a CEO, chief executive officer. And what is written about Niti Aayog, if you see the mission statement of Niti Aayog, it is mentioned that its dynamism is to be provided by eminent individuals outside the government system. Eminent individuals outside the government system will provide you with dynamic leadership in policy making. Just click Niti Aayog, see its mission statement and see whether I am correct or not. So you have now this lateral entry of technocrats and others, and that the debate that we used to, study so seriously in our younger days, as student days, generalist versus specialist debate in bureaucracy, and now they are backdated because it is now the rule of the technocrats. If you see the results of the civil service every year, who are the toppers? You just see their background, you will understand. Because India, incorporated India, INC needs this kind of people now, So this is what is happening in government, because government is now networked. It is called the network governance that is happening. And as you know, perhaps it is being described as government 2.0. Why government 2.0? Government 1.0 was something different. Government 2.0, if you see the definition of government 2.0 around the world and also in India, it is being mentioned that it is called government 2.0. That means the second version of governance, because technology is the solution to all the problems in this kind of governance. Technology is the solution to all kinds of problems in this kind of governance. So, whenever there will be problems, the problems will be solved through techno-managerial strategies. So there will be always, if you I always mention this, and in my London School of Economics lecture, I had also mentioned this, that in India, what has happened is this, that we have not been able to provide our children, despite the directive principles of state policy, and children, under 14 till 14 will be having free education, so on and so. We all know that. Okay, good promises. But despite the fact, what happened is that despite these promises, we have not been able to provide our children with slates and pencils. With slates and pencils. We are a poor country. We have not been able to provide children with slates and pencils. But what we are promising today, our ministers and policymakers are promising tabs. Tabs. A country which took 70 years time, and even then could not provide slates and pencils, they are saying we are now promising that, look, we will give you tabs. What will they do with the tabs? Have you electrified the whole country? Is electrification 100% throughout India? Do they know the language? Because tabs are, the keyboards are in English and all that. So in a tribal area, in a very poor area, you are providing tabs with English keyboards. What will happen? This will solve the problem of their poverty. Do you think that? But government 2.0 promises that, look, technology is the solution. This is the problem, I call it the problem with presentism. Everything is guided by the ideology of the present, the ideology of the immediacy. Everything we want to do right now, everything. Now, what is being replaced is that political vision of social change. This is becoming weaker because political vision needs debates, discussions, arguments, counter arguments. It's a time-consuming affair. You need to have a vibrant parliament to discuss all the policies that you are trying to. You need to have a vibrant assembly, state assembly. You have to have debates. You have to have educated, very, very erudite members of assembly and parliament in order to conduct those debates. And India had that. If you think of the parliamentary history of India, wonderful people right from the Constituent Assembly to successive parliaments, we had that. But today we don't have any debates anywhere, neither in the state assemblies nor in the parliaments. And please remember that in 1991, in July, when we adopted formally liberalization, it was adopted by a minority government, which had minority status in the parliament, led by the then Prime Minister Narasimha Rao. Now, I have worked on this because I was in Parliament Library for a certain period of time to see the documents there. There I find that when some members would mention, and I think one of them was from Orissa also, that why don't we have debates on this? That we are having a transition from the state-led path to the market-led path. We understand that, we have some contingency factors and loan and so on and so forth. But we must have debates on this because it's a huge paradigmatic transition that we are making. Then Narasimha Rao, whom I otherwise admire as a very erudite person, very erudite person. He knew 9 languages and all that. Maybe he also knew Oriya because he was from, Andhra Pradesh. Now he answers, this is his reply. And I quote from the document from the Parliamentary Library. That, look, we cannot have debates because if we have debates on liberalization, then the world will think that we are a backdated country and it will blacken our face in front of the world. So you cannot have debates in the parliament when you are adopting liberalization. So that is the importance of political communication. That you are not generating communication even when, look, I am not against liberalization. I am not one of those who will say that, down with liberalization. No, we should only have. I know that Indian state had also faltered many times. So the statist path of development also has many faults or had many faults. But the point is, why don't you have a debate? Why don't you have a discussion on this when you are making such an important, policy decision, fundamental transition for policies? There was huge importance of having political communication, but that was not there. Now, the moot question to me as a student of political science, but I still consider me as a student, after 34 years of teaching, that how public is public policy? We have to raise this question. Political communication lets you, raise this kind of questions, which many political scientists don't raise. That how public, we utter the word public policy. In our courses, we have public policy courses. Our teachers come and in the class and teach various public policies. But how many of us really raise this question? When I teach public policy, I mean, I teach two, one theoretical and one Indian public policy courses to fourth sem students. I always start my class with this, that try to understand how public is public policy. Is it being done by a government without discussions, debates, anywhere? I mean, be it in the state or any party. I'm not accusing any particular party. Any party will now do this. That they will have they will bring ordinances and all that rather than having discussions and having acts and so on and so forth. The question is how public is public policy. You are doing it for us. It is affecting our life, and you are not discussing. And we are sending you as representatives by utilizing or maybe misusing thousands of crores in elections. And even it happens that you will have elections even before 5 years. So in a poor country, we are spending so much money and our time and our labor on elections. Why don't you discuss the basic issues in our life which affects our life as ordinary people like us who are ordinary people? Where is the feedback? Why isn't the feedback encouraged from the public? So what is happening is, and this is a political communication term I'm using, informatization of policy making. Informatization of policy making at the cost of communication, at the cost of public communication. You are only providing us information that, look, we have adopted this policy. It is only information. We are being overloaded with information, but what is the communication? Why don't you? Because communication is a two-way flow. You have to understand our points. We will tell the government that, look, this is good, this is bad. We are not saying that we will every time criticize the government. We will also congratulate the government if it does something good. But why don't you care to talk to us when you go for this? In Brazil, and I always mention this as as a case study, which I have studied very carefully. In Brazil, when they had adopted the information technology policy, they had 15,000. Think of the number. 15,000 consultative meetings with the ordinary people at the para level, at the local level. That, look, we are going to adopt a kind of information technology policy. This will affect your life and all that. So let's discuss. Why can't we do it? Brazil is a state which is larger than India. I mean, if you argue that, sir, how can we have it from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Kutch to Northeast, then Brazil is larger than India. If Brazil could do it, okay, we don't need 15,000. Why couldn't we have 1,000? Why couldn't we have 500 consultancy meetings in different states of India and union territories? That is the question that I pose. I'm not saying that, that every answer lies with me, but this is how when you see governance in the lens of political communication, these questions will come up. And what is important is, this is the mantra. This is the key mantra that now I'm going to mention in my lecture here. Access is the central issue. Access. So we must have access to governance. We must have access to the act of governing. We must have access to the business of governing. And in the same breath, I will mention, we must have access to information technology also. Don't say that, we are having, information technology, this will revolutionize the society in India. Are poor people having access to this? Are they gaining, or am I being, privileged because of the information technology? We are being privileged with, I have one tab or one laptop, one PC, 3 phones and all that. What will happen to the ordinary people in India who are marginalized, barbarized? So access to governance along with access to information technology. Now, if you ask, why am I tagging information technology? Because information technology has tremendous potential to generate public communication, to generate communication. So we must take, advantage of that. I'm not saying that, we must not use computers or tabs. We must. But we have to democratize information technology in order to democratize governance. And if you only democratize governance, only then you will, democratize information technology. They are related. Because to me, a student of political science, the vital questions are this, and I will conclude with these questions. And I will request you to, you know, ponder over these questions, because these are the key questions in political science, in social science, and also in political communication. The vital questions, I always describe it. Who have access? We have to address. Who have access? Who have access to governance? Who are being left out? The other side of the coin. Whenever you ask who have access, the other side of the coin is who are being left out. Then the third question is who decide? Who decide on our behalf? Because public policies and governance touches our everyday life. So if you raise the price of petrol or diesel by 20 rupees, or even cooking gas cylinder by 25 rupees, 30 rupees, 50 rupees, 100, then we are at a very disadvantageous position as ordinary people. So who decide our life? Who decide our existence in this polity? And also related question is for whom? For whom? So governance for whom? Is it for certain people who are running the country or running the state, or maybe certain privileged sections like us? Or is it for the whole people? Because India is supposed to be the world's largest democracy. Every textbook would, on Indian democracy would start with this in a kind of, very mechanically, that India is the world's largest democracy. What is this democracy? Where are the common people? Where are the ordinary people? These questions become very, very important. So we have to keep in mind when we think of politics, in contemporary India, when we think of, the shift that is going on, transition going on from the state to the market, and so on and so forth, that people are also shifting their status, rather being compelled to shift their status from the clients to the consumers. We were clients of the state, for better or worse. The state had many faults, but still we were clients of the Indian state till 1991, from 1947. Now we have become the consumers of the market, where the state is also playing its own role. So this is what we have to understand when we try. We cannot just theorize government very mechanically. No use. I mean, Indian political science, and now I make a very provocative statement, that most Indian political scientists fail to reach the international standard, or maybe to make breakthroughs, through their books or articles. Why? Because we are still steeped in the statist kind of ideas when we talk of governance. We have to understand the shift from the state to the market. The people are no longer the clients, the people have become consumers. So the governance is undergoing a kind of churning process, and political communication can help you to understand contemporary India, to understand the complexities, the layers, the nuances of this churning process. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Sinha. Uh, it was lucid but thought-provoking talk. I will not say that it was something unknown. It was a known problem, and we are wondering what is the solution. Right. Many times I think that if you don't have any solution, then thinking and rethinking about this problem will raise our frustration only. As a normal individual, or middle class fellow, what we can do, even we cannot understand the nature and role of state. On one hand, state state has the responsibility of maintaining social justice policies, and on the other hand, state is also guided by the global economy. Professor Ashok Acharya, in his talk on global politics, he mentioned that very teeny part of global economy was spent for the social justice policies. Right. So I really don't understand whether the state is playing with us, or state clearly see the picture. So that's my first, doubt or concern. My second, doubt is that what is the impact right now we are experiencing media, right? If media is supporting you, then there is a possibility that you may win the case also. This is all about the
Hmm.
importance of public opinion. And we can see that in our legal structure, in various cases, uh, that colonial impact is still there, right? Our legal structure has not been changed. So people are
Sure.
depending on media or social media for getting the justice. And in that, you know, uh, uh, that context, media is doing a wonderful job. But I am worried about that. Now, what is the impact of media on governance? The kind of communication it has been making, especially on national media. You can see Republic, you can see, NDTV, then Times Now. Then you can know that what kind of communication, what kind of argumentation they are going to provide. If you have a mind, you can know that. Then the third, concern of mine is that you said that is there are two. You categorize two things, that is individualization of institution and institutionalization of individual. In the second, you gave the example of Nehru, and in the first, I will not name it, but we can understand. Now, between these two models, I mean, what is good to create a better life, to create a better society, to create a better state? And the fourth, uh, concern of mine is that since I am teaching in the public university, I am also worried about this, that how these public universities are very poor in attracting students from nationally or internationally in comparison to
Right.
the private university. I mean, you didn't mention the name. It is all about the kids. Right. Uh, I mean, these are the four
Good.
concern of mine. I will not say these are the question because I know that there is no definite answer to this. Again, this is
Right.
subjected to interpretation.
Hmm. But
So,
still, I will.
so please
Yeah, yeah.
respond
The
to this
very,
four.
very important. I think the four you mentioned are so, and you are absolutely. I am very satisfied that you mentioned this. It is not that by in 15 minutes we will solve all these problems. Because problematization is also very important, because I am a bit perturbed, when I find that many people look for solutions without understanding the problem or addressing the problem properly, because this kind of solution centrism is problem is that unless you understand the complexities of the problem, how can you have proper solutions? So when you express four, you mentioned 4 points as your concerns, they also problematize the issue, and they also have an implicit kind of I would say feeling that yes, we must move towards problems. Everybody wants, as a citizen of India, it is also in my interest that we must look for solutions. Now, about I will be very maybe making a very provocative remark, and I will leave it to you to, your students to think of it later also, that look, when we try to understand the interface of social justice with the state, we also have to go back to the political philosophy of state making and all that. And after reading all the, I taught in the pre CBCS syllabus. I taught John Stuart Mill for maybe 20 years. Then now the syllabus is changed. So I'm just mentioning John Stuart Mill. I can mention many others, even previous to John Stuart Mill. You understand who they are. My question is this: when I would read between the lines, I find that John Stuart Mill also mentioning this, that whenever you construct a state, and especially the scientific state, quote unquote scientific state, which the West had been proud of, then there is a natural limit to kind of social justice, because the state will always argue that, look, I have amassed this kind of power, I've been provided with this kind of power, representative democracy, so on and so forth, so I will decide on your fate on certain counts. And immediately, as he mentions, that there will be a conflict between the rights of the people, the freedoms of the citizens, and the policies of the state. Now, Mill had one very, very provocative statement that you should treat the state, we should treat the state as a kind of tenant. And when you find as a landlord that you are not having full, you are not satisfied with the tenant, you should throw the tenant out. But how do you really do it? In a country like ours. I mean, the way you just think of it. Last Monday, Boris Johnson was critiqued, and there was a no confidence motion against Boris Johnson by his own party. By his own party, that you are doing certain things which we don't like. And Rishi Sunak and all others are in great trouble. The Chancellor of Exchequer and so on and so forth. The Home Minister, who is Priti Patel, all of them are being criticized not just by the opposition but by their own party. Can you imagine this in a country like India? I mean, in a state where a party rules, or in India, where even if you may have a kind of alliance and all that, one party is dominant. So, the problem is that social justice as a theoretical venture, as a philosophical venture, is, I mean, absolutely a novel, absolutely a kind of lofty idea, lofty concept. But when you ground it on the state level, at the state level, when the state comes into the picture to decide the contours of social justice, that to what extent it remains social, in the proper sense of the term, that becomes a problem, which I also tell my students when I teach politics of social media. I mean, two of them are doing PhDs also with me. That first thing you ask is, how social is social media? When we say social media, first you start with this, that how social is social media? You are trolling me, I am trolling you. Narcissism, you are going somewhere and you say that, look, I am in this restaurant and having this kind of food and I am traveling this and that. I mean, what is the political purpose of social media? How do you generate that kind of politics through social media? That is the important. So this is the, when state comes into the picture to decide the contours of social justice, the irony is that the state has to be there, because without the state, how can you really have that kind of contours? There will be kind of lawlessness and so on and so forth. So that is a major problem that we have. About media, I always make a distinction between the mainstream media and the alternative media. Now, we are talking of mainstream media, which is so very powerful, which is owned and managed by the top entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. India is very unfortunate, on one count. That is, we don't have media literacy movement. We have literacy movement, and that is also good, very good. But we don't have, mark my words, media literacy movement. We don't have absolutely no trace of media literacy movement. In many Western developed countries, including especially in Scandinavian countries, what they have done is, from the primary school level, they have special classes on media literacy. That, look, this is a piece of news. You have to understand the language of the news. You have to now explore what is good or bad about this. Where is it being exaggerated? You have to compare various newspapers or various television programs to understand, to get to the truth, what is true. Because one channel maybe controlled by one political party will say that this is what is truth, and the other channel will say something else because that is controlled by another political party. So you have tremendous political competition among media channels and newspapers also. Everything is controlled. I was in Odisha sometime in December for this keynote lecture in Odisha Political Science Association meeting, which you had, after maybe long years, after 2 decades perhaps. And I would name him again because I liked him. Huh?
And one information, sir, Professor Amareshwar Mishra, who was the
I know.
president,
I
he
came to
passed
know that
away.
very, very unfortunate. I admired him a lot. I had a lot of discussions with him, and that night I came to know that from Professor S.N. Mishra and Professor Pani, both of them had informed me, and I'm really very sad about this. So there was a very eminent personality from Orissa who owns a newspaper and who is perhaps right now an MLA. But I really liked the way he, presented his case after my keynote lecture. There was this panel discussion. And also perhaps son-in-law of a former chief minister. Now you get you know who he is. I really liked the way he presented media. He said, look, media is like this. Yes, true. Because he is the owner of media. He knows. The point is that unless we have this media literacy movement, how can you really manage the media? And you absolutely that is we are in soup because there is a kind of collaboration that market has with media because media barons are all from the top market, they are all top market entrepreneurs, market enthusiasts. That is why you will find you see the media advertising. I have two students working with me with this. You look, I mean, there is a advertisement in media, you remember perhaps, of a particular car. Which car belongs to the Indian state. I mean, the manufacturer is, in the public sector, where the young boy has scored terribly in English and maths. And he had a long drive with his father, and the father was initially very angry with his horrible performance. Then, after a long drive in that car, the father pats his back and says, "Fine, fine, let's have some good ice creams and all that." What is it? I mean, think of it politically. Just decipher it, deconstruct it politically. That after a long drive, a car which would cost you 25 lakh car, not the car that we use, 5 lakh, 4 lakh kind of cars, and then your attitude changes. So previously you were very worried about your son's mark sheet. After the long drive you are finally look down with mark sheet, go to hell with mark sheet. I mean, just let's have a good life. This is what is happening, this it's a good life, kind of that is being promoted by the media everywhere. It's a glossy picture of media India that is being promoted. That is happened because you are married to the market. Market barons are also the owners of the media, and they are managing the media. Now, about actorization of institutions, I am not a great fan of Nehru, but I admire him for what he wrote. That is very, very important. Discovery of India. I'm not a great fan of Nehru as a prime minister, uh, uh, but I admire him because now I think that at least we had this kind of person also, because even if he was a very preeminent figure and a revolutionary and all that, freedom fighter, and then became the prime minister, he would always try to argue that let's build institutions. So you have Sahitya Academy, Sangeet Natak Academy. I mean, just I'm mentioning only two cultural institutions. Several political institutions were being created and all that. That is absolutely gone, and I don't blame any particular person for this. My point is that, as you rightly mentioned, that the global economy is now operating in such a manner that even if you and I become come in charge of our country or our state, we will also act in the same manner, because we will not have the scope to strengthen our institutions, because the market and the neoliberal era will ensure that these institutions must be weakened, these institutions must be thrown out, and something else will take place. And that is what is precisely happening with your fourth concern, which is public universities. Public universities have become unfashionable. I wrote my last book with Rutledge is on pandemic governance and communication. The book I wrote previous to that, only 2 years back, that was on social science in a global age, decoding knowledge politics. There in the fifth chapter, I have dealt with Indian academia. And I have shown that how the neoliberal scheme works. This neoliberal scheme creates and has created, is continuing with strong public universities and private universities in the Western developed countries. So you have very strong public universities in the West. You also have very strong private universities in the West. Think of America, think of any European country, including Britain. They all have very strong public universities also, along with private universities. In our case, in the developing countries, what they're doing with us is that they are trying to dismantle our public universities, and they're trying to promote private universities. Let us compete. Let us compete. Let private universities be funded the way the funding is being constricted, especially in social science. In science you may have some more, but in social science, I have seen people saying that what would you why do you need funds in social science research. I have not been asked that question because I am fairly senior and I have my whatever it is, but younger colleagues of mine, they are being asked this question: why do you need so much money in social science? What will you do with social science research? What is the relevance? Let's do technology research. We will fund that. Now, do you think that this way you can? I mean, a country which is poor in social science is a country which heads for disaster. That you have to understand. Germany, when Hitler rose, and Hitler, rose to power with a landslide victory. Hitler did not impose himself on the Germans. Now that, remember, at that point, the number of PhDs in science and technology in Germany was the highest in the world. Was the highest in the world, and many technologists and scientists worked in support of Hitler to destroy the world. You need social scientists who will be critical. When you ask this, when you raise these concerns, of course, you are raising these concerns after my presentation because you have a critical faculty. That what are we heading towards? I mean, where are we going with this kind of thing? If this is missing in a society, I'm not denigrating science and technology. They are very, very important. But what is the use of science and technology only in a society where social science, arts, all these are being weakened? So there is a systematic dismantling of public universities. I mean, there we are getting into a kind of disgraceful situation because of that. Many students, I mean, in a society, the thing, when things are being promoted like this, students will think that why should I study arts? Why should I study humanities? Why should I study social science? All are trying to get into science. Okay, even if they become second rate, third rate, fourth rate students there, even if they might have much aptitude in science, they perhaps could have performed much better in literature or social science, humanities. Now it is the fashionable thing, the status. You have status if you opt for science. Now, if this is the case, then public universities are, being dismantled, and the private universities are being promoted. And this is a very, very, I mean, I would say, an unfortunate situation, because we are a poor country. How many students can afford to pay the fees in private universities? Public universities, you get your fan, light, your teachers, and still, I would say, like many public hospitals, you still have very good teachers in public universities. You still have
I
many good teachers
completely,
in.
I completely agree. I was also thinking like that, that the teachers in the private university and teachers in the public university, I have seen teachers in the private university kids, for example. But I think here teachers are very good, but maybe what is the problem, or maybe an unseen, powerful person or powerful kind of thing uh, that is decorating everything. So that's
uh,
why public university is losing its charm, and private
exactly.
university is gaining its charm.
Yeah. No, you don't recruit people. You have stopped recruiting people. In our university, in my department, we have 21 posts, and we are now 10. But I
Yeah,
know there are many universities in Andhra Pradesh and other places. Maybe I know my friends tell me there that there are only two running postgraduate departments, two
that's
teachers,
true.
full-time teachers running. I mean, absurd kind of thing. So you have stopped, at the very foundational level, you have stopped recruiting teachers on the
and,
ground that if you
and
don't have money and this and what will happen, why should the students study social science? What is the use of social? You are this way systematically decimating. I have a chapter in that book, where I say that neoliberal tapestry. This is the neoliberal tapestry. Where you go to USA or in other places in Western developed countries, the same neoliberal tapestry operates. But they always make it sure that you have very strong public universities along with the
the
strong
private
private
university.
universities. And it is not that, as you very rightly mentioned, it is not that we are getting weaker and public universities are getting the most brilliant teachers in the world. This is not that. Okay. So this is the politics that we are having, and this is how we are moving towards, India INC perhaps.
And another problem in the academics, I am also experiencing that we people are not connecting our job with the knowledge,
Absolutely.
rather
Absolutely.
with the
Yeah.
money and position and power, right?
Mhm.
And it's primarily because getting a job in public university in academics, it's very
Mhm.
difficult. And
Mhm.
once you get a job, then you think that this chair is very important. Then
Ah,
you forget about the knowledge. That is also a
absolutely.
problem with us also.
I
Uh, uh,
started that book, in my introductory part, I wrote that the society has not yet come out with placards and processions
Yeah,
writing down with social science, down with political science, but they are very confused about our role. What are we doing?
yeah,
I mean, unless I relate my knowledge, unless first of all, as you rightly, unless I update my knowledge, and unless I relate my knowledge to the field reality, I will have no takers. No good students will come to me. And theory doesn't fall from the blue sky all of a sudden. Theory emerges from the hard soil, from the coal face of every day. So we don't do that. I absolutely agree with you. And I have been extremely critical that let's be self critical that what are we doing? I mean, American colleagues of ours or European colleagues of ours are in such a good position because they have been able to relate their knowledge to the field. Even
yeah,
you will find Indian politics, they are being theorized by the Americans and the Europeans, in
yeah.
some cases much better than us. And we are
Completely
sitting
agree.
idle. We are only borrowing certain books from the West and saying that, going to the class in a very mechanical manner and not even taking the class seriously because we are, trying to roam around, with seminars and webinars and so on and so forth. And we are not coming out with good publications. Do we have a really good journal in political science? Just think of it.
Yeah, yes,
Really good journal.
you are very much right, sir. I mean, on one hand, science and technology is progressing, technology is replacing the individual, and Gandhi was opposing to that. That
Mm.
technology should not control the individual, rather the individual must control the technology.
Exactly.
Then
Mm.
only you can bring about the good society.
Exactly. Mm.
What is the need of social science research? The need of social science research,
Exactly.
the need should increase because
Huh.
technology is increasing, right?
Exactly.
So the more technology will increase, I think
Mm.
doing social science research must also increase. Otherwise, it will damage the society. And I can see that how market is also changing the Indian
Yeah.
mindset, the
Yeah.
mindset of individuals.
Yeah.
So the mindset of individual makes a society, and in a sense, I can say that the entire value system, right,
Mm.
value, ethics, morality, that is getting deteriorated day by day due to the science and technology. So
Exactly.
somewhere I think we need to protect. Somewhere I think the government must realize that social science needs to be researched, and how to protect society. Then only individual life or individual can have a very good life. Science and
But
technology is important, but
very
values are
important.
also important.
Definitely. We
Values.
are not trying to denigrate it. Yeah, we know the importance. But the point is, Dr. Mistro, I am associated with certain ministries at the center also. They point out, I mean, we have to be, as you rightly mentioned, we have to look at ourselves also in the mirror. Because they say that when we call, social scientists for the meetings, they become excessively theoretical and some of them even quote from books and
That's
said
exact.
that's not how India can be governed. Now I have no, I can counter it, because I know that there are social scientists like this. You take a
No,
book and
I completely agree with that. I always think that the social science had started with the human existence. I mean, the problem you are facing, you must connect it. I mean, social science must connect itself with
mm,
the problems the
mm,
society, individual, or state is facing. So,
uh,
until and unless you will not unpack the problem,
mm,
you are not going to get the fund. This
yeah,
quotation will not work. Rather
mm,
than if you can unpack this quotation and connect it to the practical kind of things, then there is a possibility of getting the fund.
exactly.
I completely agree that there is
Uh,
also a problem from our side.
uh,
We should
mm.
look our face in the mirror. So thank you, sir. Thank you for this
Thank you.
deliberation. So we are at the last part of this event.
Mhm.
Now I request Shubhasri to provide vote of thanks to our speaker.
I just mentioned that I was in Sambalpur 8 or 10 years back. Professor Deepak Behra of
You,
anthropology, who
yeah.
later became vice chancellor also perhaps, had
Uh-huh.
invited me. I had a
So,
very wonderful, I mean, in your auditorium, I remember
yeah.
we had a huge kind of seminar. I chaired one and I presented one. I really,
He's a
so
very good academician. He's a very good
very good and
academician.
organizing capacity is very good that I could
Very good. Yeah.
understand.
True.
Yeah, thank
True.
you. Yes, Shrivastri, go ahead.
So thank you. Yes, Shubhasri.
Thank you.
Good evening to one and all gathered here on this wonderful evening. I would like to present the vote of thanks We take this golden opportunity to thank the respected speaker of this webinar, Professor Dipankar Sinha, for attending this webinar in this busy schedule. We will cultivate the advice you gave us in the real life. Thank you, sir. I extend my gratitude to the respected webinar coordinator, Dr. Himanshu Sekhar Mishra, not only for spending his time with us today, but also for encouraging us to achieve many endeavors. Thank you, sir. It is my pleasure to thank the dignitaries on and off the webinar talk, not only for participating but also for guiding us to a beautiful life. Thank you, sir. Last but not least, I thank my fellow for enthusiastically arranging this webinar. Without you, this webinar would not be successful. Thank you, my bodies. Once again,
So thank you so much, Sri.
and all, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you all,
Okay,
and
okay,
I wish
thank
you
you
all
so much.
well, the students and the researchers who are there. We would depend on you, senior people like me, that you will take the cause of political science ahead, and we will be proud of you seeing that. Too. Thank
I think we are, I mean, my generation is the connecting point between you and our
you.
students.
Exactly.
So I think the responsibility on my shoulder is
Definitely.
very
Now I'm very
huge.
impressed. I mean, the way you
Very huge.
expressed your concerns and the points. I will tell you very frankly, very few political scientists think in these lines. Unfortunately, I mean, I really impressed that
I
you.
think my supervisors. I used
Uh,
to. Even today,
hmm.
we had a debate with. I mean, I was the student of Professor Arun Kumar Patnaik from
Arun,
Hyderabad,
Arun. I mean, he's a good friend.
and
I mean, from
I'm
Hyderabad.
very much
Yeah,
connected with Apurva Mukhopadhyay. Very
Acha,
much
acha.
very much connected with I think he died, Ashok Kumar Mukhopadhyay.
He was
So
my
I
teacher. Ashok Mukhopadhyay
uh,
was my teacher. Yeah.
yeah. So
So thank you,
I'm well connected,
Pradeep.
and I discuss many
Hmm.
things relating to this. And today
Hmm.
we had a very good chatting
Hmm.
between me and Professor Patnaik. And I did my
Hmm.
PhD with Nivedita
Uh,
Menon in
no,
JNU.
Arun is. I like him. I mean,
He is a person who has concern about the social problems,
very
and
much,
he's a
very
very
much.
thinking brain.
Thinking person, and
So
because he is into political thought, also he has a good grounding. Also,
yeah,
that is
true,
also very important.
true.
No,
And
no, yeah,
he's
it's good.
he's a
That's why
person who
now
can.
I understand why you, where do you take the cues from? Okay, I mean that is how you have been trained. Yeah, it's very good.
That is what
Uh,
we always trained how to connect theory with the practice,
uh,
and Sir always tells me that theory is not constant, so practice will
exactly.
move. So you
Hmm.
have to theorize the practice. You have to change your theory. But
Hmm.
when you are theorizing the practice, you should be double or triple serious about it. And
Exactly.
today he was bringing the how the Indian constitution maker,
Hmm.
they did not take the concern of Mahatma Gandhi when Mahatma Gandhi was making this point that mutual respect of each other, right? And that
Hmm.
any articles of Indian constitution does not speak about this mutual respect. And today we had a kind of discussion with Arun Kumar Patnaik,
Great,
and
great.
that from that actually I got this attitude
Hmm.
of thinking about doing social science research. So thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir, on behalf
Thank you.
of all. On
Thank you.
behalf of all,
Yeah.
I am thankful to you.
Hmm.
So this is the
Yes, sir.
end of this event. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Good night.
No, good night.